this is a very important subject, and
it is. It's unbelievably deep.
mm,
And the question is, you know, what is it based on, your discrimination? In accordance with what?
yeah.
You know, you can discriminate in a religious way or your own social way, and then you're completely off. You know, how do you know? It's very, very complicated. It's very nice, very interesting, very good you took it up. I watch CNN every day. No, you know, that whole thing is quite something. Yeah. But they've got a few problems with racism, and well, not only a few. And this whole thing about police violence has been going on for years, because when I went there in 1960, my sister warned me, yes. You know, and I was a kid, I was going to the Olympics. She said, you know, you go out in New York, you be my guest. But she said, if you get lost, don't ask a policeman. In England, we send you to go see the nearest bobby, you know, and they always get you okay, you know, they tell you where to go. She said, in America, you don't go to the police. I couldn't understand it, you know, I just couldn't understand, but I knew what she told me, but I couldn't understand. So it's a known thing. It's been going on for years.
Okay, so warm welcome to everyone. My name is Radha, and I live in the Rome Center, and very pleased that we're able to do this meeting for the Italian family, BK family, and students, and with Sister Denise, who of course I don't think needs very much introduction at all. Our topic today is developing our discernment power. During these intense times when things are shifting and changing at all different levels, including within the Brahmin family, what can we focus on particularly to increase our capacity to discern clearly so that we can make the best decisions beneficial for all, personally and collectively? What are some of the things that could come to deceive us? How can we check that our intellect is aligned with Baba and able to pick up signals? And there have also been a couple of questions from Wendy, and I'll read those out, which would be great to be included within the theme. How do you know if your intellect is linked to what might be Baba's way of discriminating? Your discrimination is based on something. How to tell if your intellect is being influenced by society, friends, religion, my own beliefs about life? Discrimination, and so that's the first one. The second one is discrimination is to discern, to choose, good, bad, useful, wasteful. It demands we have a good idea of negatives, how to look at the negative, but not be influenced by it, and not be shy to look it in the face. Innocence is shy, so we cannot be innocent and discriminate properly. Please, Sister Denise.
Om Shanti, and thank you so much, Radha and Wendy. I am speaking from the retreat center in Anubhuti in Marin County, north of San Francisco. And I am very happy to be with all of you from Rome and beyond. The power of discrimination is very deep and very important. I think it's quite interesting that at the present time, and I was discussing this a little bit beforehand with Wendy, I just want to point up that at the present time, there is a lot of violence going on between people in the United States, especially because there has been not just one, but a few murders from police to people of color, and not just only Black, but other ethnic groups. And this has created a big reaction, not just only in the United States, but in many parts of the world, because discrimination on the basis of race. Earlier in the year, we experienced the big flare-up, which was pointed up in the Me Too campaign, which was discrimination on the basis of gender. And so race and gender are two of the big main areas where there is discrimination. But this is a very, you can say, negative kind of discrimination. So let me first of all define discrimination and why we call it a power in the study and practice of spirituality. So discrimination is the capacity of the soul to distinguish one thing from another thing. And the icon that serves to point up this power is two diamonds. One of them is real and one of them is fake, a zirconia. Do you have the power to distinguish and discern which of these diamonds is real and which is fake? Now, when it comes to a diamond being an analogy for a human being, do you have a good capacity to be a good judge of character? Can you distinguish and discern where people are coming from in terms of their mentality, their attitude, their values, whether they are honest, whether they are real, whether they have good intentions or not good intentions? And this requires a very subtle power of discernment. What we find in the world is people discerning on the basis of gross factors. And when you base someone on the basis of physical characteristics, you are going to deceive yourself. And that means that in answer partly to the first question of Wendy, what is the base of your power of discrimination? So where discrimination on the basis of bodily characteristics is going on, that will give you a faulty conclusion. So in the process of consciousness, you perceive something, some situation, some people in front of you, and you have to discern what is going on, because you have to decide whether you're going to respond to that or not. And if you're going to respond to it, how you're going to respond to it. If you're going to walk away from it, how you're going to walk away from it. All this is the combination of two powers. One is the power of discernment, and the other is the power of judgment. And these two words, discernment or discrimination and judgment, have been made into bad words in today's common vocabulary, because people use the word judgment to mean criticize or condemn, and they use the word discrimination to apply to when you are biased against someone on the basis of characteristics that are incorrectly being applied. So there's deception upon deception and faulty moral logic being used. And this is why we need to take a good look at this subject. So let us look at how these powers of discernment, discrimination, judgment, evaluation are taking place within human consciousness. And one thing we have to be aware about is the question of perception. Now, in spirituality, we would say, first of all, that the self is not a body, the self is a soul. So when you are looking at another human being, if you're looking at their body and thinking they are their body, you are mistaken, because they are not their body. If you judge a person on the basis of body gender or body color, then you will misjudge a person. And when you misjudge a person, then the action you take on the basis of that misjudgment will be incorrect, and it might well be a crime. So there are many crimes committed on the basis of faulty judgment, faulty moral logic, and so on. And all of this adds up to generalized human suffering. And the extent and intensity of this generalized human suffering has reached a point where the quality of life for humanity as a whole is really pretty bad. And so we want to look at the causes, we want to look at the fundamental origins and systems of belief which have created this mistake, and see what can be done to sort it out, to correct it, to resolve the situation. And this is why we have to start with fundamental principles as what is a person. And so in spirituality, it is said a person is a being, a soul, a spirit, an entity or a unit of consciousness, which manifests itself through a physical body. And physical bodies come in different colors, and they could be either male or female. And nowadays there are sort of additional genders, because sometimes a person will be in one gender but feel like they belong to the other gender. Sometimes there is a change of gender, and many things related to gender consciousness and gender bias. But from a physiological point of view, it's more or less basically male or female. Hermaphrodite is also possible, but it is relatively rare. So the colors that people come in go all the way from white to black, and there are different racial characteristics that go along with the colors. It is said yellow, brown, black, white. These are the basic things. And the souls who are living within these different genders and colors of body are not a factor of the body type. Body type is just like, cars. You could be driving a BMW or a Volvo or a GM car or a Toyota or whatever the various different brands are. And your car could be painted red, green, yellow, white, black, silver, God knows what. But the type of car and the color of car that you're driving doesn't say much about your driving skills. And the driving skills are to do with the being who is driving the car. In the same way, the choice of behavior and how you conduct yourself depends on the soul, not on the body. So if you discriminate someone on the basis of the body, then you will arrive at a faulty conclusion. And a lot of this is to do with the habit of generalizing. People will say, I do not like black people. Why? Because all black people are like this or like that or like the other. And any generalization anyway is false, because there are always exceptions, always. So to start with, it's false. So these habits, which are embedded in the social system, are really very problematic in terms of the consequences of these actions. Now, let's look closer at consciousness. Let's look closer at what a soul is, how a soul functions. A soul perceives, and you can perceive through your sense organs, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, tongue, skin, These are your sense perceptions. And most information that you get from the world is coming in through your sense perceptions. But your mind is a very subtle kind of sense perception through which you perceive people's intentions, atmosphere, emotions, vibrations, very, very subtle things. And in spirituality, we also talk about the third eye. The third eye, which is said to be positioned in the center of the forehead, and that you can perceive directly with your mind attributes of other beings that are not physically perceived in the physical material world. And there are some people who believe in this and some people who don't. But even among the people who don't believe it, they still do talk about it as if they did believe it. And then if you ask them, they say they don't believe it. So there is a kind of double standard, you can say. Now, when you perceive something or some situation, it prompts you to have to make a decision what you will do about it, if anything, and how you will respond to it. And so you have a part of consciousness that you can call conscience, that you can call intellect. We use this word intellect or intelligence. And so with your intelligence, you will say to yourself, this is good or this is bad. And if you think it's good, you will be happy about it. If you think it's bad, you will not be happy about it, and you will react or respond depending on if you think something's good or bad, or something requires attention or doesn't require attention. So these are all the decisions that get made within the consciousness, and then you act on that. And whenever you act on something, that is called karma. And there is a big philosophy of karma, which we will not go into in detail here. If you want to know more about our understanding of karma, and you look at, there's a video series that I do called Karma, Destiny and Choice, which you'll find on my YouTube channel. Karma, what you want to do is you want to do good karma, good actions, because good actions produce good fruit. If you do negative actions, it produces negative fruit, and you cannot escape the fact that you have to eat the fruit of what you did. So in spirituality, a lot of importance is given to positive. Whatever's positive is good, and correct. So we need to be able to discern what is correct and what is positive. Now we have obstacles in this world. Now, obstacles are created by prevailing social attitudes. And prevailing social attitudes are created by the culture, the religion, the education system, the social system, and where you fit in that system. And while there are many people who say everyone is equal, but I think it was John Locke who said, okay, everyone is born free and equal, but they are surrounded by chains. And these chains can also be considered as the chains of karmic accounts, karmic debt. If you do a negative action, which has a negative effect on someone, or does harm to someone, then that creates a chain. And you are bound to that person, and you are also bound to repay that debt, and there is no escape, no forgiveness. So this is something to know about. A lot of people don't know about this. The more you know about it, the more you will strive to make sure that you get free, that you stay free, that you do not enchain yourself. And for this, you need powers. So one of these powers is the power of discrimination or discernment. So using the power of discernment, this is always done in the context of circumstances. It is said in the Gita that circumstances arise, they persist for a while, and then they fade away. And all circumstances are like this. The duration of the circumstance will vary from a matter of seconds to years, hundreds of years, thousands of years even. But the law is circumstance arises, persists for some time, and then it will fade. And if it is a negative circumstance, and many are, that circumstance has to be endured. And so another power that you need in connection with the power of discernment or discrimination is the power of endurance. Because if you are unable to endure the circumstance that you find yourself in, then you will react. And when you have a react, you will perform a negative karma, and that negative karma will create a chain around your soul, and you will be bound to that situation, and you will have to repay whatever negative contribution you made. And so if you have the power of endurance, it is very useful. So we got three powers: the power of discrimination, the power of judgment, and the power of endurance, which we also call the power of tolerance. And there's another one that I would add to the mix, because these powers work together. And that one I would add is the power of what we call the power of accommodation, which means we have to not only endure something that is difficult or painful, but we have to accommodate it, because it may be that it doesn't go away for a good long time. And so you have to figure out how to live with it in such a way that you can manage, and that you are not handicapped by it, you are not reduced in your functionality by it. So these four powers are really, really helpful. And how do you get these powers? And again, I will not be moving away from the cause and source of the power of discrimination, which was pointed up in Wendy's question. Now, in spiritual practice and study, we say, along with the fact that all people are souls operating through bodies, we will also say that the original condition of a soul, when it's in full power, is pure, peaceful, fully empowered, loving, in a state of happiness or bliss. And when you are in that condition, then the karma that you do comes from that space. So it's naturally pure karma, good karma. And so you naturally remain free. You do not do negative actions, and you do not take in negative energies, because that is also something to be careful about. But the problem that we are facing at this time is that all people, all souls are very depleted. Hardly any power, hardly any ability to endure any difficulties, not having much ability to deal with challenges, problems, all these kinds of things. It is very difficult to be loving, very difficult to be peaceful when you're provoked, very difficult to understand the fundamental principles of what it means to be a human being, very difficult to respect human rights, even if you know about them, and many people don't. I don't know if all of you who are listening have read the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, but it's a very good document, and it is important to read it because then you know what your rights are as a human being and what other people's rights are that you need to respect. And this is also quite a good black and white document that helps you to understand on what basis you should discern and evaluate your response to circumstances and your relationship with people, places, and things. So let us go to the source of the power of discernment. Two sources. One is why you should discern in a certain way, and that has to do with understanding what a person is and what has to be respected. And secondly, to go to the source of spiritual power that enables you to do what you know to be the right thing. Because when you do not have spiritual power, even if you know that to act in a certain way is wrong, it's stronger than you, and you will do the wrong action in spite of yourself because you are too weak to do the right thing. So it takes power to act correctly. It doesn't take any power to make a mistake. You know, you hear people saying that it doesn't cost you anything to do the right thing, but that is an untrue statement. It costs you a lot to do the right thing. And this is why people do the wrong thing, because it's so easy to do the wrong thing. Of course, you have to pay, but not at the time. You have to pay later. If you want to do the right thing, you pay at the time. You also pay later, because the world, which is based on different considerations, you can say, will exact a price from you, will punish you for doing the right thing. Why? Because when you do the right thing, it shows them up, and they don't like that. So they will take their pound of flesh from you. But ultimately, the laws of karma do play out, especially over a long period of time, and everything equalizes in the end. So let us go to these actual discrimination on the basis of gender and color, and let's analyze why that is faulty and why people think that it is not faulty. So first of all, I would point to two concepts, which is a pair, and we use the term soul consciousness and body consciousness. So the default mentality for people in the world in general is body consciousness, where you think of yourself, I am a body, you say, I am female, I am white, I belong to this nationality, I work in this particular arena, and I am whatever my professional designation is. All this is body consciousness. And it is also called false ego. So it's called false ego because false ego is to consider yourself to be something that you are not, and to perform your action based on the false idea of what you are. It's called false ego. And there are also something called ego defense mechanisms, or ego defense postures, which have to do with attitudes and behaviors based on the idea that I am this body. I am my body, I am my gender, I am my position in society, I am my professional designation, I am my nationality. All this is false. And when people do actions based on that, those actions cause harm to other people, and they chain you up, and you will have to pay. And if not now, then later. But there is no escape. Another thing that we do need to take into consideration, and that is the idea of reincarnation. Now, reincarnation is something that some parts of the world believe in, some parts of the world don't believe in, but not very many people know about it. Reincarnation is interesting and relevant because a lot of these karmic consequences are paid in another life from the one where you incur the debt. And because of that, you don't know why you deserve such and such a difficult situation, or why such and such is happening, or people have the question, why do bad things happen to good people? And from a spiritual angle, we would say, okay, all people are good people, but good people do bad things. And some good people do really bad things. And why good people do bad things is because they're weak, much more than because they're bad, you see. Every soul is a child of God, but every soul is running on empty. And so the one very important thing that has to be done is to replenish this loss of personal spiritual power. And for that, meditation is required. And when you meditate, it means what exactly? It means that the soul becomes conscious of the self as a soul and ceases to identify with the body. And then the soul connects with itself, and from that position connects with the Supreme Soul, which is also called God, or the Supreme Being, the Source, the Force, many different names, Allah, Bhagawan, so many different names. Ahura Mazda, I bet you don't know that one. That's the name for God in the religion of where they believe in light. And this is the Parsis. So now this source will give you energy, spiritual energy. And this spiritual energy that you absorb into yourself through meditation takes the form of whatever power and virtue and quality that is required at any given moment. And so the more spiritual power you absorb, and the more you learn the skills of applying it according to the different powers that you need, the more adept you become. And you are a very skilled human being who knows how to perform pure karma, and who also has a good power of endurance, accommodation, and who will be able to understand situations well, to discern, to discriminate, first of all, what is going on. And there are many people who have this general question, what's going on? And you need a good power of discrimination for that. We are living in quite stressful times at the moment because of the combination of the coronavirus lockdown, which has produced a lot of mental health issues, a lot of domestic violence, a lot of addictions have flared up. A lot of people just cannot stand being locked down and restricted and forced to sit with themselves. And so there are many, many quite severe reactions, and people are asking, what is going on? So a soul with a good power of discrimination and who knows more than meets the eye will say something like, what's going on is, first of all, time is speeding up. A lot of people can feel that. Time is speeding up. Time, what is time? This historical moment that we are passing through is also a time when a lot of karmic accounts are being settled. That means all of these actions that have been going on, which have chained people to each other, the time for repaying the debt is coming strongly. And so people experience a lot of pressure, illnesses, mental instability, social troubles. All these things are making people feel very, very uncomfortable and very reactive. A person with spiritual wisdom, power of discrimination will say, what's going on, what's really going on is we are passing through a very, very critical time, which is of a particular duration. We cannot say exactly how long, but it has a limit, and we have to get through it. And the best way to get through it is to empower ourselves spiritually, especially through meditation. And so when you learn to do these things, you can handle these pressures pretty well. So we have observed in the last few months that those who have been practicing meditation are able to manage the situation really very well. You can handle your own company, no problem. You have learned well how to live with other people who are very different, have very different opinions than yourself. We are quite used to doing things like this. We can be fine if you have to stay at home, that's okay. And so that the pressures have not affected those of us who are regular meditators to nearly the extent that they have affected people who are not meditators. So we can see a really discernible difference. And so you can discriminate if a person is a meditator or not by how they handle pressure and stress. Now, let us look at when you see another human being. If you see their color, and if you have grown up in an atmosphere of racial prejudice, then you will not see anything except their color, which will immediately catapult you into a mentality where you see that person as an enemy, as inferior, as bad, as someone who you should harm. And so you go right into that mentality, and then you will do a negative karma. Now, you may be observing violence on the television because there is a lot of it going on. You may be observing protest marches, and then you will take a position and you will say these are bad people, or you will take another position, the law enforcement people are bad people, and you make a generalization. So the one thing that the power of discernment will tell you is that all generalizations are by definition false. And so do not make a generalization. You would have to say some people of color have negative behavior and some law enforcement officers have negative behavior. But you can't say all. And if you say some people of color have negative behavior, that applies to all the different colors, all the way from white to yellow to brown to black to red, or whatever color you decide somebody belongs to. It applies across the board. Your good action or bad action has no connection whatsoever with your body color. It has no connection whatsoever with whether you are wealthy or poor. There are some wealthy people who do really big crimes, maybe bigger than what is possible for some who are really poor. And there are some wealthy people who do very good actions. And we would say from the laws of karma that if you do very good actions, a lot of charity and good activity, then this will produce fortune for you. And there are many people who are wealthy, healthy, good relationships because they have had many lives of good karma. And there are other people who are unfortunate in many different ways, but they nevertheless have good intentions and they perform pure karma, even if their circumstances are not good. And so you cannot say with any kind of credibility that just because someone is female, therefore, no, not at all. So the color bias or the gender bias is based on prejudice, and that prejudice is based in the culture, and the culture that most people are living in is patriarchal. A patriarchal culture set up more than 1,000 years ago, maybe 2,000 years ago, which says that by definition, males are more valuable than females. And who came up with that? Somebody who was male, presumably, who said, I think I better take care of myself and create this kind of idea. But it would not be quite as simple as that. I think one of the reasons is because of their relationship with the concept of God. And the concept of God, God is very often depicted as a male, an older male, and God made man in his own image. And then what about woman? Well, woman, you know, there's the story of Eve and. So all of these stories in the Abrahamic tradition and in others as well let people understand that you have to think of males as superior and females as inferior, as white ones as superior and dark ones as inferior. And this dark and fair idea comes from India, in fact, where the idea is that if you are dark, it means you're impure and low, and if you are fair, it means that you are pure and elevated, except that they were talking about the soul, not the body. How does a soul change color? Does it change color? Let's look at it in another way. When a soul is full of power and energy and light, then it's bright. But as the energy level of the soul gets depleted over time, and even more depleted through negative action or karma, then the brightness of the soul becomes dim. And so the soul is considered to be dark. And so a dark soul could well be living in a light-colored body. And a very bright soul could well be living in a dark-colored body. So the color of the body has no connection with the brightness or dimness of the soul. But because people don't have that third eye, or they don't use the eye of understanding to comprehend things that are more subtle, they take everything on a physical level. So I'm going to stop there. Of course, there's many aspects to this topic, far more than can be completed within the small period of time that we have. You can come in and we can take up some questions. We might want to have just a few moments of quiet together. Just have stillness for a few minutes. And you can see behind me this picture, red picture with a white light inside it, the picture of Shiv Baba or God, and just focus on that for a few moments and let yourself become still and think deeply about the power of discrimination, discernment. Om Shanti. So, Bea.
Thank you for your very clear, well explained. It was like a consequence. Every aspect was one after the other, and was making sense. So here we have a question from Adi. If I feel that someone is not honest and that I cannot trust him or her based on an action he's performed, how can I be sure whether it is the power of discernment or body consciousness?
What I would say is if you have the power of discernment, you will know if that person is trustworthy or not. And that means you're not deceived. So if you know that you cannot trust that person, then you will just be careful and not put yourself in a situation where someone could take advantage of you. And that means to say you would not be naive. But it doesn't mean that you have to doubt the person, that you have to avoid the person or whatever. All you have to do is make sure that you understand and you discern what's going on. In the same way, if somebody lies to you, a lot of people, they don't like it when somebody lies to them. But if somebody lies to you and you discern it, that this one is telling lies, you don't have to do anything about it, but you just have to make sure that you are not deceived. Because if someone's lying to you and you don't know, you're in trouble. But if someone lies to you and you know, then you deal with it. It's not a problem because you're not deceived. So the important thing is that you don't get deceived.
But what if I perceive something and I'm not able to discern because I'm doubting if what I'm perceiving is actually correct?
This topic is called the power of discernment or the power of discrimination. And many people, their powers are lacking or not working. And this is connected with conscience. If you are a person who always listens to the voice of conscience, and you're used to performing moral reasoning, which is a rare person, then your power of discernment will be in good order. But most people, they go against the voice of conscience multiple times every day of their lives. And when a person does that, then your power of discernment stops working, your conscience becomes dysfunctional or loses functionality, and then you are obliged to rely on advice from other people who will generally give you advice which is in their best interest, but not necessarily in your best interest. So to do the work that's needed to develop the power of discernment is really very good. And a very important part of this is meditation. Another very important part of it is studying the laws of spirituality, because these laws of spirituality make everything very clear. So if you know what they are, that is going to help your discernment a great deal. And thirdly, to regularly trust your own conscience. And you need to do this over a long period of time, because it doesn't get fixed in 5 minutes. This is something that has to be cultivated. And so no time like the present to start the cultivation. And in the meantime, at least try to have some connections or some friendships with someone who you do trust, and discuss all these things with, and then you will start to grow your power of discernment and discrimination.
I was thinking if you could expand more on the line of linking our intellect with God, with the divine, and how to draw power so that we develop the same discernment as God.
Okay, you want to have the same perception as God. That's a very high aspiration. So we can try for that, but we are a long way from having the same kind of ability as God, but it's a very, very good aspiration. The first thing is we need to sit down and study spiritual information. And that means also we need to churn. So there is something that we do in Brahma Kumaris called churning the ocean of knowledge. And we study our material in such a way as to develop circular thinking. And if you know, the word churning refers to going round and round, backwards and forwards. And this is applying to milk, and when you move the milk around, it gradually splits into butter and buttermilk. And this is very much to do with the development of the power of discernment. And in the process of the agricultural work of dealing with milk, once you have split the milk into milk and buttermilk through churning, you then have to cook it and cook that butter until it becomes clarified butter or ghee, which means there is no further water left in that butter, and it is just pure butterfat. And this is a metaphor for this power of discernment and discrimination. Your mind is mixed. You can say milk and water. And water is symbolic of ideas that do not have much significance. And so inside a person's consciousness, there's all kinds of thoughts running around, a few of which are significant and meaningful, but most of which are trivial and nothing to do with anything. So the process of churning is a process of separating what's meaningful from what is trivial and discarding the trivial. And you have to do this work by churning, by thinking, and then you cook it through deep yoga, because yoga is usually called a fire. And so when you are studying material that comes to you from the mind of God, and then you have to think about it, because it's quite different from material that is produced by regular people. And the difference between a regular person and God is God does not have a body. And when you don't have a body, it means that you do not perceive the material world through sense perception, but that you know the material world independently of chronological occurrence of events. So the being of God is very different from a normal human being. And if you want to become like that, then you have to think about the difference between knowing something through sense perception and knowing something through understanding. Take, for example, somebody loves you. How do you know they love you? Well, it may start off with reliance on sense perception. Do they contact you frequently enough? Do they tell you, I love you, I love you? Do they demonstrate it through various different activities? Or do they sometimes betray you, or sometimes they're not nice to you? And so you would say, well, they love me to some extent. But if someone really loves you, they will demonstrate it for a bit, but then you need to just understand this person loves you, and that they may behave in ways that do not prove it. But it doesn't mean that you should doubt it, because if you know that someone loves you deeply, as the relationship has developed over a long period of time, they should not need to be demonstrating it all the time, but it should be something like a knowing. And in the same way, when you start to know how God looks at you, how God looks at everyone, how God thinks, what God stands for, gradually, as you study this, it becomes a knowing, and then you know. And what happens is there are things that take place in front of you that may cause you to doubt. But if you have a knowing, then you will know that those things are illusory. And sometimes people say, you know, if this is God, then God has to perform this way, that way, and the other way, according to their criteria, but which may not be actually how God works. And then if God doesn't fit your criteria, then you say it's not God. But your criteria are not the right criteria. So then you have to find out, okay, on what basis does God say, I am God? And you have to check that and consider it. And you have to evaluate it. So you need the power of discrimination, the power of evaluation, the power of recognition, many things to see whether something is what it says it is, you see. And the big problem is people say, I am a human body, but they're not. And God says, I am the Supreme Being, but it's difficult for you to discern that because your inner eye, your third eye, is deactivated. So it has to get activated, because you cannot discern something invisible, something intangible through your sense perceptions. That's not possible. They're limited. So you need to study, you need to practice, and slowly, slowly you develop all the necessary capacity. But you have to be patient.
If the power of discernment is connected with being self-confidence and with having trust in the self.
Yes, I would say it is very much connected. You need to have faith in yourself, and you cannot have faith in yourself if you cannot connect with yourself. And many people are really disconnected with themselves, and this is because throughout their lives they may have been discriminated against. If they are female, they'll be discriminated against for being female. If they are of color, they may be discriminated against because of color. And then this will cause them to lose confidence. And so if your confidence has been taken away, and that's the purpose of discriminating against people, it's a power game. And it's a game in which, instead of being better than the other people and therefore ahead, you try to weaken the other people and make yourself go ahead that way, which is called unfair competition. And it's fair if you develop yourself, and you develop yourself in such a way that you don't undercut other people. But this is rare. Usually people do that. Now, if you want to develop yourself having been discriminated against in different ways, you have an uphill struggle. And so you need to study what really is me. And instead of saying to yourself, why have I been unfairly discriminated against? Why is there injustice? I would take those why questions away and tell yourself, I know very well why. So why is not a question. The question is, what will I do to bring myself up to my full capacity to develop faith in myself, to understand who I am in a real way, and then become self-actualized? This is really the question to look at for the self, and then begin the process of cultivating these things. And even if there is all sorts of things going against you, make yourself firm about what you are and who you are. Keep yourself very close to God and know that you have value and that you are being accompanied by the Supreme Being. So you do not have anything to fear. And all those people who threaten you in various different ways, is empty. It's only effective as long as you allow them to get to you. So there is also a practice in the practice of Raj Yoga called Don't Take Sorrow. Very, very important one. And that is, people try to harm you. And just, you have to discern, if somebody's trying to harm me because they're jealous. And I don't have to take that in or take that on. But the message you get from all over is, if somebody is trying to harm you, it means you deserve it. No, it doesn't. Or it means that they're right. No, it doesn't. It's just what it is. Somebody tries to harm you. You don't have to take that in. You don't have to take that on.
As you mentioned the powers, we know about the 8 powers. And someone was asking, with the idea of developing those, do you think the discernment power is the main one?
You know, I think most of the people who are on this recording here are connected with the practice of Raj Yoga. And so you would have come across some of the material that we study. And there is one part of it which focuses very much on this power of discernment and says, if you have this power, then you are ahead. More than if you have to single out any of the powers, choose this one, because this one will carry you ahead, and it'll kind of bring the other powers and the other virtues with you. Because our greatest problem is we cannot see clearly. And the power of discrimination means that you can see clearly. And if you see clearly, you're not deceived. If you see clearly, you understand what to do. It becomes intuitive as well as a matter of using your intelligence. So this is a really, really good power to think about, to cultivate, to experiment with. All these things. Very, very good.
The sister is asking, what do you think, do the people that are heads of the United Nations recognize that we are actually souls?
I think that we cannot really make a generalization. I think that there are people in the United Nations who do recognize it, and it's in different degrees, of course, and according to different belief systems and different understanding. And then there are many who don't, because, as I said earlier, the default consciousness is body consciousness. So you think everyone is a body. And I think that the subject of whether a person is a body or a soul is not discussed in the United Nations, so that if a person is aware that people are souls, is a personal philosophy, a personal attitude, because, you know, documents and agencies of the UN specify bodies. So there is, you know, just as you take care of the environment, there's agencies for taking care of cultural heritage, buildings, they're physical, and then the conference on women's issues. So there definitely there's women and there's men. They don't say souls in female bodies, they say women, you know. So on the whole, all over the world, people are dominated by their sense perception, and their spiritual understanding is usually secondary to the sense perception, because to make the spiritual understanding primary, you have to do a very advanced kind of spiritual practice and study. And there's not that many people who do that. And so there may be a few like that in the United Nations, but I don't know who they are, and I don't know whether they're in position of power and influence. But everyone counts, and the more people suspect and give attention to the spirit within, which I think is growing, the better off we are. You know, the meditation used to be like really strange activity, but now it's quite mainstream. People use the word mindfulness, they use the word meditation, they use the word yoga, quite in quite a general way. So there is quite an awareness, but there's also the opposite. And I'm not quite sure about the ratio, but I still feel that at the moment the body consciousness is much the dominant view about what a person is.
Marina speaking, may I ask something? Based on your power of discernment, how you see the next future after this story of, you know, not just the virus, but many troubles in the world. So how you see the next future?
Thank you for that question. I think it's not just only the power of discernment, but it's a combination of intuition, discernment, and study. And as you say, as you know, I keep going back to the study. We have a very big body of information that we study in Brahma Kumaris, and which talks to us about the world cycle, and it talks to us about spiritual laws. And then you have to discern from what's going on around you if the information that you're studying is correct and right on the button. And it seems to me that it is. And as time goes by, it appears to be progressively more accurate. So that is very good feeling. But what I can say is that after all of this breakdown of the world as we know it, I see it more like a phoenix rising from the ashes. You know, the phoenix is a wonderful mythical bird that dies by fire and is born by fire. And we use the term phoenix to refer to a big change. And I do feel that there is huge change going on. You know, the climate is changing. Everybody knows that. And we don't know what it's changing into. We just know that the, you know, the ice caps are melting, the sea levels are rising, the weather is more and more extreme. But we don't know by looking at it what comes after. But by studying, we know that this lasts for some time and then it settles down to something very balanced. We know there's big changes in the sun going on. We know the Earth's magnetic field and the polar, north-south magnetic orientation is really getting very screwed up. And we know that there's a big population problem. We know there's food security problem. We know that there are lots of wars going on. There are big health issues going on. So the world as we know it is really collapsing. But according to me, things have to really break down in order to get renewed. And it happens in different parts of the world, or you may get a neighborhood where the buildings are really bad, and then all of a sudden the municipality decides to upgrade the area and they knock down all the old places and they put up new ones. And this causes a lot of displacement and distress. And so we are going through, I think, a period where things that are not working or failing, things that are not holding up are falling apart. I think also the culture is changing. So it's really, really big changes. But after big changes, always, it settles into something really, really good. So it's a question of not looking at the process of demolition, but looking at the creation of, okay, if you're going to demolish something, what are you going to put in its place? And really focus on the architecture of that, and put your investment of your time and energy into what is coming next. And I feel very, very pure and positive about that. You know, I have great faith in humanity. And I think also it's a great healing that's going on, because people have been so badly hurt by ideas that go against the essence of what it is to be a spiritual being in a material body in the material world. And we've lost contact with the heart and soul of humanity, and now we're getting it back. And so I think that will reestablish a beautiful time of harmony. I'm looking for that.
As you said, this time is very intense, and the question is, why are there so many challenges, and why this symbol of Maya, as we say, is so strong? And whilst we are facing whatever is happening, and we need to see, to discriminate and discern, how can we not get influenced, or how can we not take sorrow from what we are facing?
What we're looking at is polarization. And this polarization has created a sort of great war, a great animosity between black and white, between north and south, between east and west, between male and female, between rich and poor, between the different religions, between the different cultures, between the different languages. Everything is polarized and tearing itself apart. And so it's very scary for people. People see what's going on and they just do not know how to deal with it or how to respond to it. It's bigger than anything any government can deal with. And so people are kind of scared. And many people, they decide, okay, when things are really bad, then the last resort is you turn to God. So quite a few people are doing that. But what I've studied, what I've learned in my studies is that every so often things reach an extreme point of everything being polarized. And once it reaches the extreme point, rather like the J curve, you know, the J curve where everything is just going up and goes through the ceiling. It doesn't go through the ceiling. It goes up to a particular point, and then it comes right down to zero immediately. And so I see we are in a time of huge change, sudden change, rapid change. And so it is very destabilizing and very disturbing. And I think if you connect yourself with the soul, be soul conscious, because the soul is stable. The physical things are unstable, but the soul is stable. Somebody may have a disturbed mind, but behind that disturbed mind, there is a stable soul, the pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful being of light, but it's weak, you see. And when it's weak, then it's hard to be stable. So stabilization comes when you're connected with the Supreme Source, the Supreme Being, and also when you look at everything. I told you we study circular thinking. Look at everything as it rotates around you. And you know that in a hurricane, which is a big rotation of winds, the eye of the storm is very still. We need to position ourselves in the eye of that storm and find a quiet place there and stabilize ourselves in stillness and in connection with the self, in connection with God the Supreme, and ride this out, because it's not going to go on forever. It will finish. I don't think it'll go on for much longer, and then everything will become stable. This is how I see it.
We're very grateful for this time with you and to have this clarifications on many aspects. So I don't know if you want to add anything.
What I would say is don't worry. A lot of people, because they can't see far, they worry. But if you see far, don't worry, because after this reaches a certain point, it stabilizes. And always remember, you yourself are forever. The soul is immortal. And we have to definitely go through these tests, these disturbances, but we can make it. Since the world is cyclical, we make it every time it reaches these extreme points. That's our situation. Not to worry, not to be afraid, stay centered, keep rotating around this central point of I am an immortal being of light, and I am connected with the Supreme Being. And even if the material of the world is going haywire, I am not. I am okay. And it will settle down when it's reached its peak of disturbances. So for that, we have to endure, we have to be patient, we have to have faith that we will get through this. And so I'd like to thank you very much for having me, and thank everyone for coming online and joining with me, and for your questions. And maybe we should have a few minutes of stillness, but I will send the mic back over to you, Bea.
As I was saying, so many thanks messages on the chat of the Italian family. As you know, we have English speaking and Italian speaking only. So lots of greetings from all of us, from Rome, Milan, and so many other places. And it was nice to connect. Thank you.
Bologna.
Wonderful. How are you? Nice to see you. Yes.
Yes, I didn't mention everything, but we have Bologna, Milan, Sardinia for sure. I saw a lot of comments and questions, and many other places.